it up to 60% louder with up to 260% more perceived bass.
Well, good morning, good afternoon to you. Welcome to this edition of Tech Talk with ZYXEL. How are you doing today? I'd like to just welcome you to this edition. My name is Tri from ZYXEL. I'm one of the senior product managers here at ZYXEL. I've been here for about 15 years, and I've been in the networking industry for about 20 years now. This is kind of a weekly interactive kind of discussion forum. We want to try to run it almost every Tuesday around this time, really just to provide you a kind of a quick, informative session that's what I'm hoping to be more interactive. We want you to ask questions related to the topic at hand. We'll take, with the agenda here, we'll have a quick introduction to ZYXEL. We'll present the topic of discussion at hand and open it up to live Q&A at the end. So get those questions posted in the Q&A section. You'll also be unmuted at the end to ask those questions live. So be sure to have your microphone or your phone set up and ready if you'd like to. Basically what I'll do is if you want to ask those questions live, you can raise your hand and I'll let you ask those questions. Otherwise, I'll just cover those questions at the end that aren't with anybody who's tied to it who wants to ask it. So also don't forget to follow us on Facebook. So I'd like to welcome you again to Tech Talk here. Let's go to the quick introduction. So ZYXEL is celebrating this year 30 years of networking experience. Most people are like, well, who's ZYXEL? Well, we've actually been around for quite a long time. So this year we're celebrating 30 years. We were established in 1989. We have over 1,500 employees worldwide. A lot of them are R&D and support. So about a third of our workforce is R&D, doing the hardware and the software development. We have 700 businesses right now who use ZYXEL solutions globally in 150 markets worldwide. If you count all the devices that ZYXEL produces and customers use, there's about 100 million devices connecting people now today. So we also provide a very comprehensive range of products and solutions. So let me move my camera over to this one. We have an end-to-end solution that really gives a user a true one network experience. We achieve this by using different kinds of innovations, of technologies. We make it secure, we make it easy to use, especially for the experience of both the users and the IT that's responsible for maintaining those business networks. We offer a full range of UTM security appliances with full threat protection and VPN encryption solutions. Managed cloud and managed and cloud access points, wireless solutions for any kinds of applications that you have out there. Ethernet, fiber LAN switches, supporting the most basic kind of connectivity setup to really complex, fully managed infrastructures, including layer 2, layer 3 switches with and without PoE injection. Gateway routers and hotspot gateways. So everything that you need for just having a gateway to be able to provide solutions of, guest network access, hotspot, peer, paid tier billing, that kind of thing. We have solutions there. And of course, all can be managed centrally as a standalone product, as a central product, or via cloud. So we have cloud solutions as well. So kind of, again, tailor-made, a lot of solutions, a lot of product lines that can help you in kind of any application or whatever your business model may entail. But today we're talking about kind of a play on words. I like to do that actually. So I'm calling it securing business networks and how to choose it. So how do you secure more business by securing business networks, right? So we're going to talk about what are the options available, some of the technologies, what fits in the applications that you are deploying, things that I want to discuss. So that's what I really want to discuss and talk about today. So how do we secure business networks and actually secure the business related to that as well? Well, security, why is it important? Well, we kind of know that, right? We live in a world that is dangerous in a sense, especially for the network world. Any device that is plugged into a public network is subject to, really instantly be scanned, pinged, or compromised, right, by zombie hosts. Compromised zombie hosts out on the internet are constantly opening thousands of sessions looking for new hosts to infect. Ransomware, malware, they look for ways to exploit and inject their code into unprotected systems and take them over. It used to not be this way, but threats are everywhere, and it continues to grow. So just by plugging it, if any of you have ever done that, if you plug in your firewall router, anything that has like a log, or one of our firewalls into a public internet and give it a public IP address, and pretty much instantly the log starts to fill up with, kind of login attempts, different kinds of port attempts, attacks, those kinds of things instantly pretty much pop up onto your logs there. Also, security is required in a lot of industries. You may be dealing with industries that require PCI compliancy or HIPAA compliancy, but even if a small business is not even governed by those kinds of requirements, they should still have some sort of protection, right? And right now, a lot of businesses, they just go to a store and just pick up an off-the-shelf consumer-grade router and says, okay, this is firewall on it. So they get a consumer-grade firewall that says like it's an SPI firewall, but that's not enough, really. I've talked to many end users and partners, and a lot of them, like their customers, like ignore the fact that they're actually vulnerable. They think that they're safe. So pretty much they're waiting for something catastrophic to happen before they take action. So that's kind of like, backwards of what we as a vendor, as a manufacturer of security products, and as you as a customer or partner delivering these kinds of security products, we need to take action in educating the user that they are vulnerable. And it's kind of typical, right? Just imagine you getting a home security system after the fact that you've been robbed, right? So that's kind of the typical mentality that people tend to have, that it won't happen to me kind of mentality. Now, instances of cryptojacking has really skyrocketed in the past years here. It's grown like 8,500% over pretty much the last year. People unknowingly, they go to like malicious websites that are compromised. They get infected with an agent, which then kind of uses their local machine to do a lot of CPU or crypto mining. So it consumes a lot of CPU, a lot of systems resources that impacts that system from running, especially if they're taking up all the capacity, making the devices a lot of times really unusable, or maybe you just think, well, maybe it's just my PC is running slow, but there's probably something in the background that is eating up all those resources. On top of that, if companies are paying for the cloud, right? If they have these co-location servers and things like that, and they're paying by the CPU usage, man, they're going to be paying an increased amount to do all this extra work for these crypto miners. So it adds up to the cost. There's all sorts of things, all sorts of issues. Of course, ransomware is also running rampant, right? I call it ransomware as a service. There's actually, ransomware continues to grow. In fact, they continue to have sites that pop up that offer ransomware as a service, if you can believe that, where you can basically make your own variants. You get to choose almost like a cooking show. You pick like the pieces of how you want this to behave, and where is it going to send to what a Bitcoin wallet when somebody has to pay the ransom, things like that. And so these are causes for concern, because there's always an increase in new variants, and of course they're made to either do a small scale attack or spread themselves worldwide. So we can see some of the attacks right there, like WannaCry. Last year was like 5.4 billion attacks were blocked, basically. Now, with those who don't think about security, or they have kind of that good enough security mentality, it's just a matter of time, I think, when it does happen to a business. I mean, I think there's the statistics of like 46% of businesses will get hit with some sort of malware or some sort of attack within the next year. And most of the attacks are not really targeted towards them, because most of the time people will say, well, my business is small, nobody's really attacking me or looking for me, but they're really agnostic to the business. They don't care if you're a small customer or big customer. These threats are just looking for something to just infect. So they don't care either way. So either way, we're all facing the same internet, the internet that the enterprise face, which they protect themselves against. And then of course, the more knowledgeable businesses that then protect themselves as well. So why are we all not, protected on that same internet? And they usually say, well, the common phrase is, well, time is money, right? And if businesses go down because, their PC, their servers or whatever is down because of ransomware attack, they're in a big loss for money and time, right? To get all that back online. Now, of course, in the growing age of technology, we continue to see more and more applications and new cases, and these are more complex. So it tends to push the limits of the hardware firewalls, which require either more speed, but also more security. So when you're building out a network, I typically factor in about 3 to 4 devices per person that's connected. So when you're looking at the number of seats, I typically will just multiply the number of people times 3 or 4. Of course, I also find out what kind of applications they're using. Are they doing voice, video, data, those kinds of triple play applications? Or if they have like additional servers, backup scenarios, those kinds of things, all kind of factor in. Of course, I also look at the speed of the WAN, really in order to gauge kind of the need, if they have higher speeds, especially if they want to maintain high levels of security and keep those speeds going. And of course, now higher speeds are available, very affordable actually. So, you know, it's a matter of time that people will upgrade and find out, well, maybe my hardware is not up to speed to protecting me. Pardon the pun, but that's what it is. But with more applications, there's also more threat points for to defend against. So this calls really for a deeper packet layer, right? So deeper packet and layer 7 scanning at that application layer. If you had a choice, you know, if I came up to you and said, well, you have a choice. Do you choose low security or maximum security? And it was the same cost. What would you choose, right? I would choose maximum, of course, right? I'm always about, hey, give me the best, give me the most, you know, kind of mentality, especially when it comes to security. I don't want to skimp on that at all. But with everything, there's always a trade-off. So high security scanning is very processor intensive. So it means that if you want to enable full UTM, it can actually cost you sometimes a tenth of the speed of what you would find as a full just doing SPI firewall. So I mean, obviously SPI firewall is like the baseline of a firewall, but it really doesn't do any, you know, really major anything. Of course, it costs more because you're doing a lot more work. You're scanning every packet and looking at its headers and doing all sorts of scanning, deep packet inspection, you know, of that. And as a result, you kind of need to factor in higher throughput capable hardware. In general, which then costs a lot more. So this wasn't really a problem before when people had connections like 50 megabits per second. You know, that was only a couple of years ago. But now you see, again, the explosion of internet connectivity and the availability of that. It's now, you know, causing some issues now. So, of course, the common workaround that a lot of vendors will say is, well, just disable some security features. And, you know, back to my analogy, it's like getting a home security system. You get the top of the line home security system. You know, high end, and then you just never arm it, right? You just, out of convenience, because it's too cumbersome to walk in and have to type in my code. I'd rather just keep everything unarmed and then just, you know, so what's the point? So you can buy, or you can buy, you know, another expensive hardware that can handle the throughput. Or you just live with lower speeds than what you paid for, which I don't think any of those options are acceptable to the customer or even as a partner, even from a, you know, making sure that people are safe kind of standpoint. So what do you do? How do we maximize security while also still maximizing speed? Well, before we go into that, let's look at some details about UTM itself. Now, threats can come in all, you know, shapes and sizes. And in order to manage all those layers of threats, we need multiple layers of protection, because there's no one, you know, silver bullet that will protect you against all threats, because they're coming from all different kinds of directions. So something that can block and stay up to date with the latest threats, both from inside out and also from the outside in. So it's kind of a combination of both. And so we need that kind of multi-layer protection. Just to kind of give you an idea of some of the key UTM features when you're speccing out a network for security. You want to look for kind of these options. These are kind of the major ones that typically kind of define what UTM, you know, platform you're going to use. The key first one is anti-malware. It uses to identify, block 650,000 viruses, malware, ransomware right at the gateway. Intrusion detection. Be able to detect suspicious patterns and anomalies in patterns and behaviors, and then, you know, block those kinds of access. So sometimes there are some Trojans that are opening up ports that are making weird connections to like a remote client or something like that. that can also be detected. Layer 7 traffic scanning, just like I mentioned earlier, deep scan on the packet to identify the application, what threats that could be done, as well as looking at even encrypted traffic through an SSL. So even if it's in SSL, we have SSL inspection capabilities to handle those kinds of traffic. Content filtering and Geo enforcing. This is kind of one of the major ones. It's a very simple idea, but it's one of those things where people have a really good grasp and concept. It's basically cloud-based database of 140 billion URLs right now, and it's continuously being analyzed, so you can block HTTP access and also HTTPS, so both the website content and also the domain. You can also, using the Geo Enforcer, to block even regional IPs, so at the country level. So you can block people from going. I'll cover a little bit more about that as well, but that's kind of the idea. How do I block Facebook? How do I block YouTube? That's content filtering. Application security, being able to identify, categorize, control applications and behaviors. So, you'll have different applications that are trying to have access. You will need either prioritize them, or you need to block them, or you need to limit them. We have the application security handles that. And then sandboxing. This is kind of the newest UTM function that is available in today's age. It is cloud intelligence, being able to execute and look at unknown threats and basically make them known. So these are kind of the fundamental building blocks of UTM. Of course, there's always the firewall, the DHCP, everything that you're used to in finding it in a gateway router. That's all kind of the baseline. Now, these are the high level options that you want to make sure you take a look at. So let's take a little bit deeper about Malware Blocker. So Malware Blocker is basically signature-based scanning. So it actually will stream content or stream traffic through via email, FTP, HTTP, whether it's upload or download. It can actually scan that even in compressed files and look at that content and look for different common file types, etc., and be able to match it to something that may be looking like malware or a virus. So it's using a signature, and it's optimized in the cloud database as well. So it updates through the security cloud, uses some sort of database to make sure that it has 0-day blocking capabilities. So it provides almost same day kind of, or after a few days, depends on what kind of virus it is and depends on the application. It can be provided very quickly and be reactive on that. Now, of course, the common question that people always ask, let me go back, is that people always say, well, if my gateway has a malware blocker on it, do I need antivirus on my local PC? And the answer is yes, you still need antivirus. You still need some sort of malware on your PC itself. What we're blocking is kind of that first layer of defense, right? So anything like 0-day, we're going to block against the latest threats that are out there now. But there are millions of malware out there. So you still need your local database to handle that, as well as in case you do get infected, it's able to then remove you. Typically though, a lot of malware protection software usually only update once a week in terms of your computer cycle, unless your IT manager has changed the time frame. But typically by default, it's like every Wednesday or so, it looks for new packet signatures to update into its system. So in that week, there potentially could be many viruses, many malware that are coming out, which was what our product would then be blocking against. With URL DNS blocking, that's where you can block Facebook and YouTube. And also, it also has a reputation database as well. So the user can query, basically request for a website. It checks its local database, which is then cached, for example. And then if it's not in the cache, then it will actually ask the cloud side, where the cloud will then tell the firewall, hey, this is a social media site, and based on whatever cloud security you do have, it can block and allow. And it's very low latency, the time that it takes to do that, even with unknown kind of web pages. You can choose how to handle and deal with those kinds of sites, whether you still allow or you just block any kind of uncategorized site until it is categorized later on. The check is very accurate. It gives you a very broad coverage. And of course, it's always ever evolving. So once it's responded, it'll block malicious websites. So if there's certain sites that have been that are malicious or have been compromised, or inappropriate sites, things like that, they can give either a block or a warning. Now, Geo IP Enforcer, so Geo Enforcer is kind of made so that you can kind of isolate yourself. It translates basically IP addresses into geographic mappings. So there's a database that contains all the kind of IP addresses that are out there and are provided to us in the cloud. And we can figure out basically what country the traffic is coming from. Now, of course, it doesn't stop, a true hacker per se who is, knows how to VPN into the country and, kind of spoof addresses here and there. But what it does prevent against is a lot of zombie machines that have already been compromised. And they're just looking for random hosts, right? And they could be coming from any of these countries. So you can see, where the kind of origination of attacks kind of come from. So there's a lot of IPs and stuff like that that can be affected. So how it works, it's pretty typical. You have kind of a firewall or a request out either in or out, and we can choose that, okay, well, traffic that's going to a certain country is blocked. But at the same time, we can also map it backwards. So traffic coming from a certain country is also blocked. So we can block all sorts of communication. So if customers are, or your clientele is only in a certain country that you're focused on, then you can choose to just allow for that. So you can whitelist yourself and block everybody else. And you can tie that, of course, to a security policy. And of course, application control is another one of the key features that I mentioned earlier. It's about identifying what kind of application that you're using. So in in the typical before, we would ask, or typical IT would say, hey, well, why don't I just port block or port allow stuff, right? But ports are no longer like an effective way. It is one way, but it's not effective because there are some applications, like for example, Skype or Messenger, that kind of thing. If it can't get out on its native port, it will actually use just port 80, which is your web surfing port, to get out to the internet to communicate. So in that particular case, you can no longer just block, port 80, because then you just affect all of your web, your web access. So if you're able to identify stuff like YouTube, Pandora, things like that, or applications for work, you can prioritize it, like WebEx. You can give it prioritization where you can block, YouTube and things like that. Or maybe you might say, well, for Netflix, we're okay with people using Netflix outside of business hours. So you can actually create a profile that will allow for them outside of business hours to use that kind of content. And of course, then once you've identified it, you then can control it. Like I mentioned, you can prioritize it, you can throttle it, you can block it. So a lot of different options once you've identified what the traffic is. Now, IDP is also another important factor that goes into that UTM side of things. It's both, it helps to identify and block things based on signatures. So things like buffer overflows, kind of web attacks or web server attacks or different types of malicious exploits using a signature. Or it can also look at protocol and traffic anomalies. So it's looking at kind of anomaly behavior there to block it. And then also behavioral, identifying bots and CNC servers, so calling home packets that are trying to call home to initiate like a ransomware connection to to a server or something like that. It will also detect that and block as well. Now, of course, conventional UTM blocks threats that are known with signatures, with heuristics, with reputation, and these can be identified as good or as bad, right? So it's easy to go, black and white, or in this case, green and red. But there's also another type of traffic, which we kind of call a gray area. And that's where the problem where conventional UTM comes in, has an issue with, because it might be good, it's kind of suspicious, but we're not sure. So you can't really block it because that would just potentially cause a lot of false positives there. So we need some sort of advanced threat protection, especially this is where sandboxing and AI comes in to manage those kinds of threats. So in order to conquer those unknown threats, we use the cloud. Data or files and stuff like that come in from the network that are unknown or kind of suspicious is sent to the cloud for analysis. And of course, then it is then contained and emulated sorry, it's emulated, then it's contained, and then it's identified, whether it's a malicious attack, etc. And of course, that information and data then is updated to the cloud database, which then is passed on to all other devices that are in that field. Basically any threats that you find on your network that are unknown, that become known, becomes known to everyone else as well at the same time on the next, basically their next update patch. So it's really effective to kind of help to spread the immunity, I guess you can say, to other devices out there. And of course, that leads to peace of mind. Multi-layer protection, providing kind of the most complete defense against network threats. At the same time, you get visibility as well through alerts and reports and things, so that you can define to the customer and to show to the customer, it's really a simple way to get all that visibility to provide you the security and also kind of the reporting. So what is the best defense? And I think we kind of talked about it already. I think the best defense is the multi-layer, as much security as possible, right? That is the best. So I usually go through kind of a few questions when I'm on the call with our sales team here, and we're trying to spec out, well, what is the right solution for the customer? There's a few questions to really kind of help me narrow down like which solution to kind of propose. Also, you want to reach out to your sales team, sales rep, that we do have some materials like product matrix, documentation, and also a comparison chart. If you have some competitive compares, we have those available that can help you choose or at least pick which model is the correct one, or at least gives you a ballpark. But of course, these are the questions I would ask anyways, even with the comparison sheet. Of course, the first question is what kind of, or what level of UTM security do you need, right? Do you need none? Do you need a little? Or do you need a lot? What is your application, right? So what is that level? Do you need to follow PCI? Do you need to follow HIPAA, that kind of thing? That defines what, range of products you kind of choose. The next big question now, especially, is what is the target WAN speed that you have, either now or within, the next coming year or so. You want to be able to future-proof, right? You don't want to put a box in there technically, and that, well, if they upgrade to, the next tier of internet service, that it's not going to be able to handle it. That's going to be the bottleneck. That's going to be the problem right now that you're going to be facing. And customers are going to be looking for that, or the customer is already in that that shopping mode, because they know that their current hardware cannot meet what they need in terms of speed, because they're doing their speed tests and they're finding, well, it's well below what they have, and it's the firewalls issue. It's the bottleneck there. So they're looking for a new solution. So we, what to choose there. Also, at this time, what is the current firewall used, right? So again, it's kind of about finding what is the kind of comparable. It kind of gives you an insight of, well, how big of, the number of users and things like that are in there. And that's kind of part of what kind of firewall they're using now, because if they're just using a small, consumer, it might not be the, the right size for them. So find out, about that. And also the desire, if they have desires for blocking Facebook. I get a lot of people calling and saying, well, how do I block Facebook? How do I block YouTube? How do I block ransomware? Right, so finding that right target to go after, and so that you can defend against. And then also, from your perspective, it's whether you want to go with a standalone solution or a cloud solution, right? So which way, how are you managing it? Are you doing it as a managed service where you want the visibility and the cloud kind of management and visibility, single pane of glass to manage all your customers? Or are you more of a, kind of a break fix, install and kind of forget it kind of deal? So you have options there as well. So ZYXEL actually offers a giant portfolio depending on what you're needing. If you're just looking for encryption, security, VPN series is great, high throughput, high performance. It also supports SD-WAN. So if you have that kind of application. Now, if you're looking for more of a cloud kind of application, the NSG series is where you would go to. It's more of like a simple UTM, easily to manage, easily to configure, and it's all using our Nebula cloud, which then has your benefit is then there are switches and access points that are also part of that Nebula solution. So you can get kind of an all-in-one cloud solution through Nebula. Or you want a standalone on-the-prem UTM solution. This is our, fully loaded with 1 year of all the UTM features. It protects against threats. So typically, it's kind of like for it's our kind of our current generation, but it's not our next generation. So it's still a next generation UTM. I know it's kind of confusing there, but it doesn't have any sandboxing. So if you have kind of smaller, lower bandwidth needs, I guess, or you know, under, let's say, a couple hundred megs, then there are products that can fit that, you know, that range. But of course, my suggestion and my push is to the advanced threat protection. So the ATP is basically our newest product line, which it gives you kind of best of both worlds. It is the full-featured advanced threat management, so all the UTM features that I'd mentioned earlier, as well as sandboxing to block against unknown threats. And it provides it at a very high throughput speeds, even with all the services enabled. So before, you know, we talked about, hey, well, just disable some features and you'll get better throughput. Yes, but that's not the way to go. This is the way to go, is to choose this kind of product that is cost effective, fits the price point, fits the speed, and fits, you know, kind of the security level that you want to maintain. So features like sandboxing, web security, application security, malware blocker, intrusion detection, Geo Enforcer, and it can range all the way up to 1.2 gigs of antivirus IDP turned on. So that kind of translates to about 600 to 700 megabits of real world throughput on the high end. So on the low end, though, even though the ATP 200 has a very cost effective as well, and it will do, it's kind of rated for about 250 to 300 megabits of actual real world throughput. So it can fulfill a lot of the connections that you're finding now. I just came back from a show, and that's one of the top questions I asked was, do you have a customer that is, you know, they've just increased their internet connection and your firewall no longer can meet those security needs at those speeds? And so far, 100% of them, yes. And so we went straight to the ATP and said, this is the solution. This is going to be the game changer that you need to offering those customers a secure solution. Now, of course, there's a difference between the ATP and the USG. If you're already familiar with our USG, you may be wondering, well, what is kind of the differences of ATP? So in general, from a UTM perspective, they're pretty much the same, except ATP has additional like botnet filters, sandboxing, and also zero-day kind of URL reputation kind of blocking as well. So everything else, the malware stuff is pretty much the same. Of course, the IDP UTM throughput of the ATP series is just well over kind of the comparable USG model. IPsec, VPN, SSL, etc. They're all included there, as well as high availability functionality. And now the main difference is that the USG currently has more of the hospitality functionality in there. So doing the hotspot management, the Facebook Wi-Fi, and the concurrent device upgrade is just for the hotspot functionality, really. The ATP doesn't have that support either at the moment, but it is kind of thought of. But if you want the hotspot function, you can use it kind of in conjunction with the ATP, kind of in a bridge mode. Now we offer a very aggressive partner program. It's free to sign up. So you can immediately, when you sign up, it starts you at the silver tier level. And of course, in order just to maintain the silver tier level, it only requires qualifying sales of about 6,000 per year, or sorry, per half year. And if you can go up to 12,000 per half year, you actually move into the gold tier, which gives you kind of the best margins there, 20% off of distribution, those kinds of discounts, also access to other benefits, including lead referrals, access to our systems engineers, advanced replacement, that kind of stuff. And we partner with D&H, Ingram Micro, Synix, and Wave. And if you have any stock issues or you're trying to find a product and one of those doesn't have it, make sure you reach out to our sales team. You have a regional sales rep that will work with your account as a partner, because we can always do drop ships directly from our warehouse going through those distributions. So we can make sure that you get the product you need at the right price as well. So if right now people are saying, well, I can't make any money, so I'm just going to go to Amazon and just have them, the customer buy it, and I'm just going to go install it. Well, don't do that as a partner. You actually can get benefit and actually make money off of hardware selling our products through distribution through this particular channel. So make sure you take advantage of it, because then why not sell to your customer at the Amazon price and make double-digit margin there? So it all makes sense. So at this time, if you have any questions, which at the moment we don't have any questions right now, but if you have any questions and you want to ask them, you can raise your hand and I can just take questions and You know, we could chat live. Just make sure that you have your mic on, unmuted, and raise your hand. Just leave it raised, and I'll call upon you, and I'll let you know, and I'll unmute you so that you can talk. But I wanted just to let you know we do have some additional sessions. I'm trying to do this regularly, either like every other week or so. Just to have a regular time that you guys can come in and chat and kind of learn something new at the same time. So the next one is coming up March 26th. And it's not 11 p.m. That's a typo there. It should be 11 a.m. It's 11 a.m. It's going to be covering UTM 101 on April 2nd at 11 a.m. We have a new partner intro. So we kind of do a kind of a holistic intro with our partners, kind of intro you to kind of the entire product line that we offer. And then April 9th, we have our SD-WAN 101. So if any of those topics you're interested in, we have those available for sign up. So you can just go and sign up to those ones through, I think it's through our VAR portal. But if not, reach out to your sales team. We'll send you the link to hook up with that, that Zoom link there. Also, I mean, we want this to be interactive. So if you want to email me directly, you can email me at it's tri at ZYXEL.com. So email me, let me know what kind of topics that interest you. I have like a bunch of topics already kind of listed, but if there's particular ones that you're looking for, hey, your business is focused on whatever it is. I want to go into hospitality. I want to go to senior living facilities. I want to do these kinds of applications. Let me know. Ping me an email. We want this to kind of be a partnership here, so that you can tell me what you guys want to learn about, talk about. How does ZYXEL fit? Or if you're interested to come on as well as a partner and talk about how one of your solutions, one of your ZYXEL solutions solved a particular problem, let me know. So Joe, I don't know if you wanted to ask on mic or not, but since your hand's not raised, so I'll just ask that. How does Nebula line compare to the ATP line? Well, the Nebula line of security products is more like the USG product line. That's what it's kind of based mostly out of. Now, just to let you know, the ATP product line will be going to Nebula as well. So it will have basically a firmware upgrade. And that's the benefit of using ZYXEL. I think, I've been telling customers like all week long last week since I've been at the show that not only do we have very cost-effective product, high-quality product, but we don't have any support contracts. We give you a lifetime warranty on the hardware, and there's no support contracts or requirements for you to get free firmware upgrades. So features like this, being able to add or upgrade ATP products to Nebula Cloud and make it flex, basically, is going to be available, and you'll just have a free firmware upgrade to get to that. So it's going to be, it's different. So the ATP and the NSGs are very different at the moment, but from a management standpoint, they will become much closer, but the performance and stuff will be a lot different. The Cloud Nebula current product line is like the USG in terms of performance, whereas the ATP is very focused on high throughput sandboxing kind of capabilities at just a little bit higher cost. I mean, it's not that much more when you compare the comparable models of the USG. So we're talking about like the ATP 200, which is our lowest end ATP at the moment. The street price on it is about $600, and that's fully loaded with all of the sandboxing, all the UTM. And I think that's almost equivalent to like a USG 60 series product. So, so it's very cost effective in that, and it really brings that high throughput down to the small business kind of price point that makes more sense, right? I think I talked to a couple of people on the show, like I mentioned, and their customers paying $60 for their 300 meg connection or a couple hundred meg connection. And in order to meet that with full UTM turned on because they need the security, they're having to buy a $2,000 box, right? So from a small business, it's hard to sell a small business guy who has 5 users. He just upgraded to 200 megs, paying $60 a month to go and invest $2,000 into a UTM firewall. So this really brings out, brings down to the price point that it needs to be and still maintain those security functionality. So the next one that we're going to have is UTM 101, and pretty much that will be one of those products, one of those sessions where I'm going to go through more detail of what kind of UTM, kind of what we covered like earlier, what they do, and also kind of maybe look at the GUI configuration as well, like where you want to configure those. So Kevin asked, when will ATP have cloud management available? It's probably in about, I believe it's in Q3 timeframe. So sometime in the Q3. You'll get more notice as we get closer to it. It may be one of those tech talks when we have later on in the future, we'll talk about ATP again and also how it relates to Nebula. So yeah, keep abreast on that. Well, at this time, if there's no other questions, like I mentioned, I want it to be, kind of an interactive session. So I know over time, as you guys continue to come to these sessions here, that you'll be more comfortable talking. I'd love to have conversations with you because I have great conversations with partners all the time, like at shows and things like that. And I like that personal touch. We get to interact. Chat's great too as well. I'm used to doing that kind of thing as well, but really want to hear from you, what challenges you have, especially related to security, how, what kind of roadblocks you hit, what are customers asking you? Are they really looking for higher speed UTM because of their kind of bottlenecked firewall? Those are kind of the questions that help me to kind of hone my message to you or to, maybe your other partners and things like that, just to be able to communicate and let them know. And I, feel your burden, feel your challenges, and see how we can work through those and be, effective on how to sell ZYXEL solutions. Can these events be viewed at a later date? Yes, so I'm recording these as well. So if you have partners or have customers or team members that are not part of, that couldn't join today, it'll be made available through the partner portal and through our webinar page, I believe, that you can then watch these. So we'll make sure to get those out. I think even in the next, every time we do some advertisement or we do some marketing on the next one, well, I'm going to ask marketing to make sure that they provide us with the link of any previous webinars or tech talks that we do. Awesome. Thanks, Martin. All right, at this time, I hope you guys have a great day. Look forward to hearing from you. Again, my email is tri@zyxel.com. Love to hear from you. Again, just feedback. How can I improve the session? How could I improve, what topics I'm doing, that kind of thing. We want it to be informative to you and be able to help you learn more about what ZYXEL does, but even just in general, learn about, topics. And so we're going to focus on security at the moment. We're going to move into switching networks and why those are important soon. And of course, we'll cover wireless in the process as well. So really, again, a range of technology talks through the weeks and the coming weeks and months. So hopefully we'll continue to build the following, and I hope you guys come back to the next session as well and come along and learn along with me. So thank you for being a ZYXEL partner. We look forward to being your ally. So however we can help each other, let me know, reach out to me. All right, thank you.
Experience Dell's Cinema Sound on the XPS 13 with an 8th Gen Intel Core i7 processor. To learn more, call 800 by Dell.